It's Mundo in the Morning. Now on FM at 95.7. Set a preset on your radio. KCMO Talk Radio.
Here's my advice of the morning on a Monday. Don't open up mail that might be mildly important on Sunday night. Don't do it, okay? You are bound to be disappointed because nothing that comes in the mail anymore, at least for me, is all that good. It's just bills and garbage and junk.
USPS, you're saying, right?
Yes. Don't do it. Do not do that to yourself. But
you opened
then
mail
again,
on Sunday night last night?
Yes.
Oh.
I just sit there and it just, lies there, and then I decide to open it at some point during the weekend. That's how I do it.
Yeah.
I'm not one of these, get my mail at the same time every day guys, open it up. Maybe it's generational. I don't know.
Good luck getting your mail at the same time every day.
Yeah, well, that's a good point, too. I open the mail, and what is it? It's the proposed property tax increases from Johnson County, from the city of Olathe, from the state of Kansas, and the schools, and on and on and on. And the proposed increase is nearly 5%. Now, you might say, well, that's not too bad. No, it's actually really bad. When you talk about the city, the county, and the state all trying to get nearly 5% more of my money, and as a result, your money as well. I'm sure this is happening right now. The state of Kansas started sending these out in the last few days. And you're like, well, 5% is not terrible. Could be Jackson County, Missouri. Yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it. I suppose if your standard of what is incompetency is Jackson County, Missouri, then sure. Yeah, I guess it always could be worse. But when the city and the county and the state are all gunning for 5% more of your tax dollars, right? Think about that. Inflation over the last year was about 2.7%. They want a nearly 5% increase, basically a 5% pay raise. They want 75% more than what the current inflation rate is when it comes to Olathe and Johnson County and the state of Kansas. A 75% increase over what the annual rate of inflation is. And they'll say, well, the mill levy rate is about the same, if not a tick lower. Nobody cares. No one does. Nobody calculates their payments or their bills based on a mill rate. It is completely irrelevant. So just know this. If you have not gotten it yet, if you have not opened your mail, maybe you're like me, you wait a few days, just understand what's going to be coming. Now, this does not mean it's a done deal. Okay, these are the proposed increases from the schools, the city, the county, and the state. They then, on this letter that you will get in the mail, will give you dates on when the county, the city, and the school boards are going to meet to potentially confirm and go ahead with these increases in your property taxes. But based on the abuse that Kansans and Missourians have seen on property taxes in recent years, when you look at a 5% hike, you might say, well, boy, dodged a bullet. It was 7-8% the last couple of years. Don't let them off the hook. Do not let these people off the hook. I'm sorry. No, we can't do it. Okay? If they wanted to have an increase in property taxes that was about in line with the rate of inflation, I'd still be annoyed because they've exceeded the rate of inflation the last couple of years, but I would at least understand it. But right now, no way, no how. You want 75% more than what the rate of inflation has been? These guys and gals that run these cities and the county and Johnson County in particular, they are just so offensive to the common sense taxpayer. But you know what? They let that ship sail a long time ago, John.
They may have their eyes on the dollars. The economy is swimming with NPR PBS donations.
What are we talking about?
Well, you know what? They can raise that on their own. They can do a little fundraiser. They can give out bumper stickers like NPR and PBS. Be my guest. I don't care. At least they're giving you something for your money. It's not clear to me what Johnson County, Kansas does for anybody big picture. Remember, the county is really not intended to be anything more than an overseer, run a sheriff's office, and that's about it, right? Fix the county roads. A lot of this stuff that you think about day to day is done by your city. It's not done by your county. But, man, they love spending it in Johnson County. When your budget goes from $900 million to $1.9 billion in less than a decade, I'd say you've got a spending problem. Now, speaking of things happening in Johnson County over the weekend, I don't know if you saw this, but according to supporters, there were 2,000 people spread up and down Metcalf on Saturday from 80th Street to 103rd Street by organizers. What were they doing down there? Well, they were having a protest for no ICE in Johnson County. Support our immigrant neighborhoods and say loud and clear, we do not support ICE kidnappings in Johnson County. And what did they want people to do? Bring signs supporting immigrants and melting ICE. So I'm just picturing, and once again, I missed it. I actually had things to do and had a life, so I wasn't there on Saturday morning. But I'm sure when people say there were 2,000 supporters, that's what Manny Abarca said. So probably like 200 is more exact. But I'm just picturing a bunch of people standing on the side of the road on Saturday morning, which was hot as could be that day. It was like a 90, 95-degree day here in the Kansas City area. Standing there with blue hair and ice melting in their hands. I like that visual to me. I wish I did a drive-by. That visual to me would have been something to behold. And I can't help but think about the fact that when you take a step back and you realize what Homeland Security is doing and ICE to a lesser extent, remember all those raids a couple of weeks ago at the Mexican joints in Lenexa, Kevin Keatsman wisely pointed out, I was out of town, he was all over that story, was Homeland Security. It was not technically ICE. But you had people who were being arrested who had broken the law, right? And now you've got Johnson County residents on a 95-degree day standing up and down Metcalf protesting our law enforcement efforts from folks who are obviously doing their job and in some cases arresting people who not only have broken the law, but oftentimes have broken the law once they've broken the law to get here in many cases, right? That's what's happening. That's the story. But don't let the facts get in the way of a good narrative. And that's what you've seen from many here in Johnson County over the last couple of weeks since that story first broke. You've seen people try to create a narrative that is in no way based in facts, but furthers this idea that the Trump administration is going out there and going around the communities, whether it's Lenexa, whether it's Overland Park, whether it's anywhere else in the Kansas City area, and just picking people up and shipping them to random countries that they have no business being in. That's the narrative that they're trying to create. And it is so disingenuous on so many levels. But it doesn't stop them, never has. And frankly, I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. Thank you on the text line to 7694 saying that you saw the anti-ICE protesters on Metcalf on Saturday and you saw 150 to 200 people. Manny Abarca from the Jackson County legislature said it was 2,000 on social media. So I'll take our texter any day over the words of Manny Abarca on social media.
One extra zero he added, I guess.
Yeah, he put 2K. So you can't even give him that excuse, Mark. You can't even say it was a typo.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Nope, you can't because his text read 2K of my fellow Kansas City area folks showing up to the rally. Yeah, 2K. 2K, my rear end. Unbelievable. All right, so speaking of rallies, in Kansas City, Missouri, over the weekend, there was a big event late on Friday with some of the most powerful Democrats in Kansas City, Jackson County, and the state, gathering to oppose the push to basically change Emanuel Cleaver's district and flex him out and obviously create a map that has a Republican in the seat, not a Democrat. And in talking to a couple of people over the weekend, it sounds like this is more or less a done deal. Like, this is going to happen in Missouri. They're going to meet next month. They are going to spend some time on their veto session. And then they're going to go out there and they're going to redraw Missouri's congressional map from a 6 Republican, 2 Democrat map to a 7 Republican, 1 Democrat map. And that would squeeze out Emanuel Cleaver. Now, this is something that I have warned Republicans on for a long time. Be careful what you wish for. I understand the want to basically stick it to some of these blue states who have absolutely gerrymandered themselves to the point where Republicans have almost no representation in Congress despite having 35, 40, 45% of the vote. I understand that want. I really do. But then I take a step back and I say politics changes very quickly. We've seen that over the last 10 years. And you may say, we've got a 7-1 map, and suddenly that 7-1 map in 5, 10, 15 years, may look 5-3, may have some more competitive general elections than what you've got right now. So Channel 41 was covering this event on Friday. It included a bunch of Democrats that are members of the State House and the State Senate, and here's what that sounded like.
Your voice matters. Your vote matters. And we will fight to ensure that we have both protected.
Nationally, Republicans are pushing to change the lines on this map. This is the area Congressman Emanuel Cleaver represents. A change could make it easier for Republicans to win the seat.
We need these folks to know that this is completely unacceptable.
We're seeing a similar tactic in Texas. Democrats there left Texas to block a vote on that proposal. In Missouri, Republicans hold so many seats, they could pass a potential plan without a single Democrat in the Capitol. Republicans say their representation in D.C. should match the state as a whole. As conservatives, we cannot continue to allow the voice of Missouri's voters to be diluted, said the leader of the Freedom Caucus. The Senate president told me Washington should...
Let me just stop there. That was from Nick Schroer. Missouri Republicans technically are already overrepresented in Congress based on the breakdown and the makeup of the state, which is 60% Republican, 40% Democrat. Right now, it's 6-2, meaning it's 75% Republican, 25% Democrat. So there's a case to make for the Missouri Freedom Caucus on redrawing the map, but that's not it. Like, even these guys and gals, but mostly guys, in the Freedom Caucus can't get out of their own way. They keep stepping on their own you-know-what because, frankly, most of them aren't all that sharp. And it's like, guys, there's a case to make here, but saying that you don't want Missouri Republicans to be underrepresented in Congress, no, that's really not the problem. The case to make is, hey, Democrats have done this, and we tried to do it fairly on a 6-2 map, but look at some of these gerrymandered blue states, so if it's fair there, we're going to play the same game here. I don't love the argument, but that's the best argument they've got.
Reflect the values of our conservative majority at home. Just this month, we've seen how Cleaver has his hands in federal funds connected to local projects. Grandview and Kansas City both launched programs with Cleaver's help.
Knowing that someone went out on a limb for us to make sure that it gets taken care of so that people can live in a home that's clean, healthy, and safe, that's everything.
The Missouri governor has not yet formally asked legislators to change the maps.
Under the circumstances, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. That's right. So...
There you go. That's Channel 41 with the coverage over the weekend. This rally happening late on Friday in Kansas City, Missouri. You're not hearing as much from Emanuel Cleaver as I thought you might. Now, yes, he's obviously talking about this, but I feel like I've heard more from Quentin Lucas on this story than I have Emanuel Cleaver, the guy who actually is the one who's going to get squeezed out of this seat. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if Cleaver's trying to work this thing better behind the scenes, but I'm not sure it really matters. Mike Kehoe told Scott Fawn of the Missouri Times over the weekend on his show, Missouri Week in Review, or This Week in Missouri Politics, sorry. Sorry, Scott. Didn't want to screw up the name of the show, my man. But he told Scott Fawn that, well, it's not a done deal. He kind of hemmed and hawed on the whole thing a little bit. But from what I'm hearing from people in Jeff City, it is all but a done deal. They are going to switch that map up from a 6-2 map to a 7-1 map. And part of that is because Mike Kehoe knows that if he potentially doesn't do it, he's going to have a headache on his hands when he wants to run for re-election. Trump will pick somebody, he will support that person, and that will be the end of Mike Kehoe's reign as governor of Missouri. It's really that simple. I'm not saying that's right, not saying that's the play, but it really is that simple right now. Trump will come in, he will get a candidate for 2028, and he will blow out Mike Kehoe in a primary. And Mike Kehoe, understandably, doesn't want any part of that. The Trump people being ticked off at him in D.C. would not be good for a guy who does want to move the ball forward for the state of Missouri. It just creates a new set of headaches that he frankly doesn't want to deal with. We'll see if Kansas City can learn a thing or two from the president's press conference today. It will be happening at 9 o'clock our time. We were scheduled to have on one of our friends at Fox News Radio, Jared Halpern, but he is going to be covering that press conference live, 10 Eastern, 9 Central, as the president is set to announce federal law enforcement helping out with the crime in Washington, D.C. Now, once again, this is not specifically relevant to what's happening here in Kansas City, but it is because of the obscene record-setting levels of violent crime we've dealt with in this town going back to 2020. And while there's been a bit of a downtick the last couple of years from our peak back in 2023, it's not great by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, right now, over the weekend, we had our 100th homicide here in Kansas City. And the worst part is that it was a 16-year-old, Traylon Sibley. What happened? Well, police are investigating after a gunman shot into a Kansas City home on Saturday night and killed a teenage girl. It was about 10 p.m. Officers were called to the area of East 36th Street and Norton Avenue on reports of a shooting. The officers arrive. They report finding a teenage girl, unresponsive, suffering from one or multiple gunshot wounds. And Traylon Sibley was pronounced dead by staff shortly after arriving. She was inside the home when she was hit by gunfire from an unknown suspect or suspects outside. Police do not have a suspect in custody. Crime scene investigators and homicide detectives are obviously on this, but especially when you're talking about children, it just hits home even further, especially a 16-year-old that may not have even been the intended target here in any of this. It's hard to fathom and understand how a 16-year-old girl could really be the target of something like this. But it led to Mayor Lucas putting out a statement over the weekend on this tragedy. His statement read as follows yesterday. Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas issued this statement following the tragic death of a teenage girl on Saturday night. With her passing, Kansas City has reached 100 homicides for 33 of the past 40 years. Here was the statement. Each life taken by violence is a tragedy. This year has seen far too many tragedies claim the lives of women and girls, including last night's. Our hearts break for the passing of another teenage girl in our community and for all the lives and families affected by these preventable and cowardly acts. We'll continue to be a city that invests more resources for those leaving domestic crisis, enhance opportunities for our young people, and focus on violent offenders for swift and certain justice and severe consequences. We will never stop fighting for a safer Kansas City for all. Here's my question for you at 6:37 on a Monday morning. Now that Mayor Lucas has been in office for the last 6 years, how much blame do you put on him for this? 913-408-7957. That's our text line and our studio line. How much blame do you put on Quinton Lucas for these homicides that are still wildly out of control in Kansas City? Early in his tenure, in 2020 during COVID and George Floyd and all that stuff, I said, listen, the guy had been in office for a year. He deserved some time to try to turn this thing around. But he will oversee not only the deadliest single year in Kansas City history, which, interestingly enough, was 2023 with 182 murders, but he also is going to oversee the deadliest 5-year period in Kansas City, Missouri history when all is said and done. We are ahead of last year's numbers in Kansas City, Missouri year to date. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, just as a bystander who obviously has the mayor on the show every single week, if he had spent more time working with state lawmakers and lobbying for things that he believed would improve the state of affairs in Kansas City when it comes to violent crime, we would have been so much better off. Instead, he went to political war with them. He wanted to butt heads with them. He wanted to get on MSNBC as a guy who is fighting the Democrat fight instead of saying, what do I actually need to do to get things done, to work with the state of Missouri to try to improve the violent crime situation in Kansas City, Missouri? And that's the part where I think he largely failed and let the city down. Don't get me wrong. I think there are some issues that the state needs to be looking at, and we've talked about those ad nauseum on the show. But a lot of this, too, is the mayor not using his bully pulpit to rip Jean Peters Baker, the former prosecutor, for the awful job that she did as Jackson County prosecutor, especially in recent years, where criminals were running rampant, where she was slapping people on the wrist, where she was not treating low-level crime the way it needed to be treated. You get the low-level crime taken care of, suddenly you're going to clean up a lot of the serious violent crime. She didn't view it that way. And what did you have? You had the inmates running the asylum. And you're not going to dig out of that overnight. It's going to take time. I'm high on Melissa Johnson. Certainly, I think she can't be any worse than Jean Peters Baker. I have reason to believe that she's actually going to take this department in a very good direction in Jackson County. But at the same time, you know, she's not going to fix that in 6 months. 913-408-7957 on the text line. Pete, he's the boss. Who else? Well, yes, he is the boss, but he's not technically in charge of things like the prosecutor's office. And that's where I think, in large part, the mayor of Kansas City could have done a much better job calling out the prosecutor's office under its prior leadership. And for whatever reason, it seemed like he was scared to death to do that, John. And that was the thing to me that I found most bothersome the last few years.
I'm with you there. It seemed that, but I like that Melissa seems to be turning out charges a little quicker.
Yes.
A little bit more frequently. Yeah.
She's doing a good job, but she's not going to turn this thing around in 5 or 6 months.
Not by herself.
No way. On the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, I blame Mayor Lucas and Jean Peters Baker for not working together with the police to get the crime under control. Well, yes, they both had moments. I mean, Jean had it for her entire tenure. That's true. The mayor had it. He's trying to get some of that credibility back with the police department, but obviously 2020 set him back a long ways. I mean, 2020 created such mistrust between leadership in this community, law enforcement, and the prosecutor's office. There were so many problems. Rick Smith didn't like Quentin Lucas. Quentin Lucas didn't like Rick Smith. Nobody liked Jean Peters Baker. Mayor Lucas didn't want to say anything bad about Jean Peters Baker. And around and around and around we go. Let's go to John. He's on KCMO. Go ahead, John. What's happening?
Hey, Pete. Yeah, you talked about some of the stuff I was going to say, too. Not only did he go to war against the state legislators, he went to war against the local department here. You know, he fought against them. He said he didn't defund them, but he did everything he could to try to defund them. He fought to get rid of the police chief. He fought against the jail, getting a new jail built to put some of these offenders, low-level offenders, away that graduate into these higher crimes. And as a man of color in the community that is having most of these issues, he has not used his pulpit to go forth and address any of the cultural issues that are going on about the lack of fatherhood or, you know, things that they just need to change within the community. to hold everybody more accountable.
Yeah.
He's just been vacant.
And
he hasn't done anything for that.
And say what you want.
Say that he can't do anything is it's just a lie. He has not done anything towards that means at all.
And say what you want about Quentin Lucas, but you know what? The man is married with 2 sons and appears to be a very good dad, and we give him all the credit in the world for that. And certainly he could, use his own platform to further that narrative as well. Stu in Rosedale, you've got a point on Operation Legend from a few years ago. Go ahead, Stu.
Well, Mongo, usually I'm calling in to remind you of details. In this case, I'm a little vague. I need a little help, and then maybe you remember it better than I do. But that operation, it was a similar type of shooting where a kid was shot in a home, probably not the target. And how was that handled? Was that under President Trump? And didn't he bring in federal investigators, kind of flood the zone with investigators to solve that case? Do I remember that part correctly?
You did, Stu. Yes, that's exactly what happened. Yes, they had Bill Barr sent in, of course, DOJ and FBI, and there was a massive short-term decrease in violent crime around Kansas City after Operation Legend back in 2020.
But wasn't it resisted by some in the community because it was Trump?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, including, there was some pushback from the mayor. You're right about that, Stu. Yes, there was, despite the fact that it was overwhelmingly successful. Nobody's civil rights were violated. The Star would have been all over that. And we got really bad criminals off the streets. Operation Legend launched in 2020, and it was named after Legend Taliaferro. He was a 4-year-old boy who was killed here in Kansas City, same way as this 16-year-old girl over the weekend. He was sleeping, and thugs came by, shot into the home, wasn't clear why, and this 4-year-old boy lost his life. Very similar to what happened potentially over the weekend here with this 16-year-old. And Trump and Bill Barr, his head of DOJ at the time, said enough's enough. We're not putting up with this anymore. And what did they do? They launched Operation Legend, where feds came in, they helped local law enforcement, and they got really bad dudes off the streets. And it worked. And it looks like today Trump may announce some level of federal involvement in the high crimes happening in Washington, D.C. And you know what? I'd welcome them to Kansas City. 6:51. Happy Monday. Thanks for starting your week here on KCMO.
It's time for the 6 at 6 on 95.7 KCMO Talk Radio. Number 1.
Well, let me start here. What happened to our boy Billy Long? Gee, oh my goodness gracious.
12 and a half, 15, $7 and a half, $20, 2 and a half, 5, 7 and a half. I yield back.
Our good friend from Southwest Missouri has been removed as IRS commissioner less than 2 months after his confirmation. It's not clear what exactly happened, but this would make Billy Long's tenure the shortest tenured IRS commissioner confirmed by the Senate since the position was created in 1862. It's going to be a Jeopardy question one day. All right? Who is the shortest termed IRS commissioner ever? And, here's the problem. I stink at Jeopardy, so I know that's going to shock many of you. You're just absolutely stunned by that.
Talk about a bombshell.
But I will get that one right. The shortest termed IRS commissioner ever is Billy Long. Now, what is Billy doing instead? Billy is going to take on the role as ambassador to Iceland. I sent him a text, and I said, what happened, Billy? I sent it on Friday night. And, it was a private conversation, so I don't want to divulge any of the details. But he said, Pete, come visit me in Iceland. I said, Billy, it's not on my short list, okay? I know it's apparently beautiful.
I've always wanted to go to Iceland.
I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't go. I'm just saying with 3 little kids, Iceland is not making the cut anytime soon, John.
In Russia, they send guys to Siberia. I was just like, well, that's pretty close to the Arctic there. I don't know if you can go any further north.
Yeah.
But, KCI, we've got flights out of here sometimes to Iceland. So
okay, well, don't give me a reason to go visit Billy. Scott Bessent's the Treasury Secretary. He will serve as acting IRS commissioner, according to the White House. But Billy Long, now the shortest ever tenured IRS commissioner confirmed by the U.S. Senate.
Number 2.
Next up, the highly anticipated week ahead for the President of the United States will involve a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin coming up on Friday in Alaska as they try to secure a ceasefire in Ukraine. And there now are reports that they may try to invite Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to Alaska. Now, that is being discussed according to people briefed on those conversations, but it's unclear whether Zelensky would ultimately be in Alaska for those meetings. But that's happening on Friday. We'll talk to Fox News Radio's Tanya J. Powers about that coming up in the 8 o'clock hour this morning and get a preview of what's to come.
Number 3.
Next up in our 6 at 6. Well, tragedy struck Kansas City on Saturday night. We hit our 100th homicide here in Kansas City, and it involved a 16-year-old girl. Traylyn Sibley was in her home after gunmen showed up outside of her home, 36th and Norton Avenue, and shot into the house. And that is where they found the 16-year-old unresponsive, suffering from one or multiple gunshot wounds, and she was pronounced dead by emergency personnel shortly after arriving. So Traylyn Sibley is the 100th homicide here in Kansas City. The mayor of Kansas City putting out a statement that Kansas City has now reached 100 homicides for 33 of the past 40 years.
Number 4.
In our 6 at 6 here on KCMO Talk Radio, preseason football, not the Chiefs on Saturday night. I mean, came up short against the Cardinals, but it's just preseason. But a really scary situation happened with Detroit Lions safety Maurice Norris. So Maurice Norris was at the team's training facility on Sunday, thank goodness, 2 days after he was taken off the field in an ambulance late in a preseason game against the Atlanta Falcons. Norris was released from an Atlanta hospital and returned home on Saturday. He shared a social media post the day after he was injured saying he's okay, thanking people for their support. But you're seeing some of this in the early preseason. Some of these injuries. We saw it to the Colts quarterback last week, Anthony Richardson. Thankfully, it was not all that serious. But now this as well took the headlines over the weekend. So got to be careful. When I saw Mahomes dropping back to pass on Saturday night, I'm like, no. But then he threw a touchdown, so I was okay with it.
One pass, one catch, 1 yard, one touchdown.
Very nice.
Great job, Mahomes.
Well done.
Number 5.
Well, the Royals continue to stink it up. They lost their series over the weekend to the Minnesota Twins in Minneapolis, 5-3 loss yesterday. But they're only 4 games out of the wild card. I don't know what to say. I mean, nobody wants to be in the playoffs, apparently, in the American League. The Yankees are stinking up the joint, so that's been good news for the Royals, who are 4 games back of the final wild card spot, and the only teams between them, the Guardians and the Rangers. Go figure. How you feeling, Mark?
There's still hope. I mean, it was a sad road trip. I thought they'd do a little bit better, but they've got the Rangers coming up. They have some easier games coming up, allegedly, with the Nationals and the White Sox. So we'll see. We'll know more after this homestand.
They open up the series tonight against the Washington Nationals, 3-game sets. So we'll see how it plays out.
Number 6.
Last up in our 6 at 6, American companies are buying their own stocks at a record pace. Buybacks are expected to top $1.1 trillion in 2025. The stock market is at all-time highs, but is this thing one big bubble? We'll talk to Charlie Gasparino of the Fox Business Network about that, the latest on the tariff front, and much more. Do not miss that coming up next. The 6 at 6 in the books on KCMO Talk Radio. There is so much to get to with Charlie Gasparino, Fox Business Network. He also writes for the New York Post, and he had an exclusive in the last couple of days I got to get to. But there's so much happening when it comes to Wall Street, the markets, everything else. Charlie, I want to start here. I just mentioned this before the break. The Wall Street Journal had this headline: American companies are buying their own stocks at a record pace. Buybacks are expected to top $1.1 trillion in 2025. Led by big banks and tech firms. Is that a good thing, or is that the sign of potential wreckage, carnage on the horizon in the markets? How would you assess that?
It's usually the latter. Okay, now there's a lot of factors involved. I mean, shareholder pressure it does come into play sometimes. You know, activist shareholders. I mean, you got to check the stocks. Do they have an activist demanding higher share price? And usually, one way to keep them quiet is to do buybacks, particularly if you have a lot of cash on hand. I remember Carl Icahn got into it with Apple for a while, and Tim Cook had to do a buyback. Right? He was going on TV saying, you know, Apple's got gazillions of dollars of cash on the balance sheet, which they did. Stock hasn't moved in the last year. You know, they got to do something, including a buyback, and they did it. So remember, it's not. I don't want to sort of suggest that there's something deep and hidden here, but usually when companies, aside from these sort of activist plays, do this, that means they're worried. You know, they're trying to keep the stock price up, because there's a lot of uncertainty, and you can see why. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding trade still. I mean, we don't know whether the big, beautiful bill with all the stimulus that's in it, including keeping corporate tax rates down, and, there's sort of depreciation for plant and equipment. There's a lot of positive growth, business growth aspects to it, whether that softens the blow from tariffs, because there will be a blowback from tariffs. It's got to be. So, but we don't know how that equals, how does that come out in GDP and CPI and the numbers that, ultimately matter. So when you don't know, sometimes you cut, right? Just to plan for the future.
Does this buyback story, does that give those mostly on the left who do not like lower corporate tax rates, does this give them some ammunition to say, boy, all these guys are doing is buying back their own stock. They're not even investing in the American people, the American worker, and their own product. They're just buying back stock. Does that give them some ammunition here? Yeah, and it'll be the same conversation we've had for like 50 years of this stuff. I trust me. I've been there before and listened to Elizabeth Lawrence talk about stock buybacks, and most people's eyes glaze over because Americans own stock in companies, right? Yep. They own, they have 401ks and they have, pension plans. So it's like, most Americans don't have a lot of money in those plans, but the bottom line is if you're telling me those plans, your 401k, which I think the average 401k is something like $136,000. Not a lot, right? But, it's there. The medium, right in the middle, I think that's what they say. The medium is in the middle, is about 50,000. So it's not tremendous amounts of wealth here, or it's not tremendous. It doesn't affect individuals tremendously, but it's still something. So Americans look at this and saying, "Oh, well, they're keeping my stock price up. My 401k might go up. That's a good thing." So that's why we keep talking about it, but nothing ever happens. That's a good point. All right, now speaking of tariffs and big companies, NVIDIA and AMD agreed to give the U.S. government 15% of the revenues from chip sales in China. What is this? I mean, is this like a one-off side deal to try to get around tariffs in the short term with the administration? What is going on here, Charlie Gasparino? Yeah, now, granted, just so you know, I'm on vacation, right? Oh, so my goodness. We bothered you on vacation. You thank you for doing this. Yeah, and that doesn't mean I'm not kicking myself in the rear end for not getting that story. That's a good story, big story. But if you ask me from a public policy standpoint, to me, I haven't got my hand around it. But think about it this way: we consider China a global adversary, right? And there's no doubt about that. Our trade war is largely, even though it's haphazard and it goes after everybody, largely focused at China. Where we have a real strategic advantage on China is our U.S. companies produce chips, advanced chips that are instrumental in AI. And they make gazillions of dollars, selling these things. I mean, look at NVIDIA stock, look at AMD stock, over the last couple of years, and you'll know why. So we're going to allow them for 15% or whatever. We're going to allow them to sell to the country that wants to take us out. I mean, to me, that it sounds so pathetic. But then again, I don't have
total information. I know what I read. But if you're telling me that I could pay, it's like I could pay. I'm a big company that's making a lot of money selling stuff. Now, I don't have a problem with them paying for the license because they make a lot of money anyway, right? I mean, okay, they pay for the license to sell. But think about who they're selling it to.
Mm-hmm.
That means to sell to our global adversary, you write a check. It's almost like a campaign contribution to Trump to pay for something. You know, last I looked, that's kind of illegal-ish. You know what I'm saying? You let me do something and I pay you some money. Theoretically, this is going into the Treasury, right? So it should lower the budget deficit by something. That's a good thing. But again, it rubs me the wrong way that you could sell to our advertisers just by writing a check. And these companies make so much money, they have the money to write it.
Well, either China's an enemy or they're not, right? I mean,
I think we got to figure that out. I mean, this is the problem with the Trump trade policy. He goes after the whole world. The whole world isn't our enemy. As much as you can't stand Canada and the lefty that runs it, or Mexico and the cartels. There's ways of dealing with those types of countries that are intransigent on issues. I mean, I think it's a good thing. Like we could get the U.S. military involved against the cartels. I mean, what's wrong with that, right? I mean, they're sitting there, we're paying them. This is an existential threat to our national security. Bingo, use it. That's a good thing that Trump's doing. Canada, if you allow fentanyl to cross our borders, we're going to have some issues with you, and we'll deal with that. But when you go after the whole world and you don't isolate China, then you have to do stuff like this. Then you kind of need China for certain things, because we're actually going after the whole world. So we need to cut them a break on certain issues because we haven't effectively isolated them. And that's what scares me about this whole trade thing. It's literally the weak underbelly of Trump's presidency. And I'm not saying it will, but it could hurt him. And it could really, end it in a couple of years if the bad effects of trade kick in. Again, I think if you're going to do this, do it right. Focus on China. Don't be cutting side deals with them. And then let's move on. I mean, you can see this with the TikTok negotiations, even though this is, we all laugh. TikTok is, this stupid app that people dance around on. But if you really believe TikTok is an existential threat, that it steals information, that it's polluting the minds of American kids, why are we having this conversation to keep it alive through some sort of, by buying it? Why don't you just kill it, take it off the app stores, and if they want to sell it to the U.S., then they can.
That's a good point.
It doesn't. I don't understand this trade stuff. It's very haphazard, and you're playing with fire when you deal with this so stuff, because you just don't know how businesses are going to react, because they don't know what the policy is, and they don't know how it's going to turn out.
So Charlie Gasparino, Fox Business, is here. You had an exclusive in the last couple of days inside the enormous Biden effort to debank Trump after January 6th, 2021. In the last couple of minutes here, Charlie, what's the high-level insight and exclusive that you had for those who might have missed it here in terms of how the Biden administration tried to debank Donald Trump after January 6th?
I mean, they literally tried to erase him from the economy. They definitely tried to put him in jail, right? If you think about the assault against him, how sweeping it was. Cut him off of social media, which they did for a time until Elon bought Twitter and renamed it, and then slowly he started getting back his accounts on Facebook and Twitter, and he created his own social media platform, Truth Social. So they cut him out of that. They went after him legally, right? They tried to put him in jail, and then they tried to cut his legs out economically. And about 10 banks. About a dozen banks, 12 banks, in addition to the two biggest right there that I mentioned, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, literally debanked, wouldn't take his money. And, it was literally under pressure from banking regulators that were pushing some bizarre Orwellian theory of who you could do business with, which is reputational risk. And the one guy that they use that on the most is him. And listen, say what you want about January 6th. I didn't think it was obviously not a great look. He didn't do anything illegal. He did say go peacefully. I went back, if you read the story, and looked at some of the crazy stuff that Democrats were saying. And Kamala Harris said the social justice riots, which did did lead to massive damages, as I'm sure it happened in Kansas City and St. Louis, all throughout. And not to mention Minnesota, New York City, Minneapolis and New York City had real economic damages. Look at the quote I used from her. She said they shouldn't stop. She said it. I'm sure she also said at times, I believe in peaceful protest, but she did say that and she was going to be the vice president. She was a presidential candidate. I mean, no, she wasn't the president, but she was egging. You could say she was egging people on. Mm-hmm. Or the Waltz's, Gwen Waltz, the wife of Governor Tim Waltz, who was governor of Minnesota, and when the big riots in Minneapolis were occurring, and then he became vice presidential candidate, was talking about how she loved the smell of the fire, the burning tires. Right? I mean, you go back. Hillary Clinton called Trump an illegitimate president how many times? Mm-hmm. You don't think that's so social unrest? Where's the reputational risk on not debanking them? It's nowhere to be found. So the reason why is because Trump didn't press those levers against them, but Biden, according to the banks, I am quoting people inside the banks, so it's not like I'm surmising this. They told me they were under pressure from Trump. He was, as one person at Bank of America put it, a hot potato, just so you know.
Jeez.
And they wouldn't take his money. Or in the case of J.P. Morgan, they literally debanked him. He had his money there, and they threw him out. He called up, and Trump actually said he called up Jamie, and Jamie was like, "Oh, we can't take your money."
Wow. I mean, that is Banana Republic type stuff.
And what's the meta here? Well, if they can do it to them, they can do it obviously to anybody. Mm-hmm. You get involved in a business that's involving maybe a Christian fundamentalist charity or a business involving Christian fundamentalism, they won't take your money, right? You get into a business that involves guns, which last I checked was kind of written in that Constitution, something about the right to bear arms. They could debank you. You get involved in crypto. Now that's changed because of Trump, but crypto was once considered an evil business by the Biden administration. Power from the government. Oh no, we won't do business with you.
Yeah.
There's a whole thing about marijuana right now. Get banks to help bank marijuana companies. That's not done on a reputational risk basis. That's done because marijuana is still considered, I guess, a class A or class 1 or class 2 drug. So they want to move it down to class 3. But this is look, if you're cut out of the banking business. The bigger point here is you don't exist. It's very hard for you to exist economically.
It is. It is. And I'm up against it, Charlie. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm up against a hard break here. I appreciate it. This is great, and I appreciate you checking in with us on vacation. I didn't realize I was bothering you. Hopefully, you're somewhere nice.
Well, you're never bothering me. How's that? That's how much I love you. I'm in northern Connecticut. I don't want to say exactly where. Someone might show up to my door and protest.
Don't sweat it. Hey, have a great time, Charlie. We appreciate you, and we'll be talking to you soon. Enjoy the time off.
All right, Pete. Talk to you. Bye.
All right, there you go. Charlie Gasparino on KCMO. Great job by him, as always. Well, it is what it is. Good morning. Happy to be here on a Monday on KCMO Talk Radio. Today at 11 o'clock this morning, Elijah Ming will have a memorial for his death. The Wyandotte County Sheriff's deputy, he was killed in the line of duty, is going to have that public service at Children's Mercy Park in the Legend starting at 11 a.m. today. This will be a 21-gun salute. Kansas Highway Patrol helicopter will also do a flyover for this event. And after, a law enforcement procession will take Deputy Ming on a final ride through the heart of Kansas City, Kansas, before he is buried in a private, family-only service. So the parking lot's open at 9 o'clock this morning. Stadium gates at Children's Mercy open at 9:30. The memorial service begins at 11 a.m. And it is once again a reminder, with the Kansas City region losing another officer in the line of duty, we lost a handful the last few years, that the vast majority of us are not waking up, starting our week, wondering whether or not we will be alive come Friday. Mentally, emotionally, different story maybe for some of you. But this is what the men and women in law enforcement deal with every single day. And too often, it is from routine cases. Whether it's Daniel Vasquez in North Kansas City, whether it's Elijah Ming, who was on a house call in KCK, these are never situations that when you get the call, you think about whether or not you're going to survive them. They are oftentimes very routine. But when they're not, they turn deadly. So our thoughts and prayers are with Elijah Ming and his family today. And if you're going out there to Children's Mercy, please do give yourself some time. Breaking news here. If you are a UFC fan, there is a new deal that is going down between the UFC and Paramount Plus. This news just breaking here in the last few minutes this morning. So here are the details. UFC has agreed to a 7-year, $7.7 billion exclusive U.S. media rights deal with Paramount. All UFC events will stream on Paramount Plus, with select events also airing on CBS. Paramount Plus won't charge viewers any additional fees, effectively eliminating the pay-per-view model. So this coming down here about 25 minutes ago. I'm not a UFC guy, but this is really, really good business. It's a growing sport. It is a popular sport. And if you're trying to find value somewhere right now, it doesn't exist with the NFL, right? The NFL is almost to the point of being oversaturated, and you're just not able to get a good bang for your buck on it. You cannot sell enough advertising at a high enough rate to get your money back on the NFL deals. If you're ESPN, Fox, or any of them, you just can't do it. But they all feel like they have to have it. I understand that. But if there's value somewhere, UFC is a good play. Now, the problem is the Paramount Plus app absolutely stinks. That is the worst. I mean, if you watch any of the shows on Paramount Plus, Yellowstone, the new show with Billy Bob Thornton I'm blanking on right now, Landman, they're all on Paramount Plus. And that app is horrific. It's by far the worst app that I use. That being said, if they can clean up the app, Paramount has a real winner here with this UFC deal. And I say this admitting I'm not a huge fan of the product, mostly because these fights start at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. They start at like 1 a.m. Eastern time. I'm like, I know Trump goes to these fights and he's having a great time when he goes to them. But like, I don't know. My bedtime's too early, even on the weekends, to stay up to watch these UFC fights. It's like boxing back in the day. I can't do it anymore, John. It's past my bedtime.
Hey, before the Super Bowl, let's watch Jacksonville play Carolina. You know, this undercard, yeah. You're like, how many do you need? Yeah. Right? Can you imagine having the Super Bowl and having 3 games before it or something?
That is such an excellent analogy. And it really, for whatever reason, when it comes to these fighting sports, boxing did it obviously for years, still does it, but boxing's irrelevant. And now UFC, it's like the main event starts so late, I'm just wiped out. I can't stay up for it. So this deal announced by Paramount and coming down here in the last few minutes. Good job. Dana White's on a roll, man. And now you get Trump, who said next year for the 250th birthday celebration of America, he wants to have a UFC fight on the White House lawn. That is going to be a sight to behold.
In the big, beautiful ballroom.
Yeah. See, that already happens in D.C., by the way, with all the crime they've got going on there.
Yeah.
But now it's going to be a sanctioned fight on the streets of Washington, D.C. next year. So, and that leads us to what is happening today. Trump is going to have a press conference at 9 o'clock this morning, Central Time, where he will announce federal law enforcement helping clean up the streets of Washington, D.C. And if you missed it, he already put out a memo to the homeless in Washington, D.C., basically saying, get out. We're going to clean up this city. And I couldn't help but think to myself, how many homeless people in D.C. are on their iPhones refreshing Trump's Truth Social posts, being like, well, boys, it's time to go. The president has put out a Truth Social saying the homeless must immediately move out of Washington, D.C. It's time for us to pack up and leave. Like, who's going to alert the homeless that the president has put out a social media post informing them that they've got to go? Who actually goes around and, like, informs these homeless encampments that they've got to pick up and get out of Dodge. I don't know who that is, but I don't think it's the homeless camps that are out there refreshing Trump's Truth Social. Something tells me that's probably not the case. But maybe they'll catch some of the press conference today coming up at 9 o'clock Central Time. And with so many major American cities obviously dealing with still rampant crime, it's down from where it was, obviously, during the peak after 2020, 2021, George Floyd, COVID, all that stuff. It still is way too high. And here's why I'm so intrigued by this administration taking a more hands-on approach with Washington, D.C. crime. If it works, it will be a case study in more conservative, tough on crime policies working in a major American city. Because we can all sit here right now and point to different examples over the year, right? We can point to Rudy Giuliani in New York City back in the 90s. We can look at Operation Legend here in Kansas City back in 2020. When the feds came in, when crime, especially violent crime, was reaching record numbers in Kansas City. And what happened? President Trump at the time and former head of the DOJ, Bill Barr, sent in the feds. They worked with then Police Chief Rick Smith. They worked with KCPD, and they got, hundreds of guns off the streets, hundreds of bad guys off the streets, and you saw a precipitous decline for the following couple of months in violent crime in Kansas City. So we have those case studies, but we don't have anything like long-term to latch onto in the last bunch of years because these major American cities are all run by the same people. If Trump essentially takes over the crime fiasco in Washington, D.C., and he leans in and he gets tough on crime. Now, I don't know how this works in terms of working with the judges and the prosecutors because they're a mess, too, in most of these cities. As we well know in Kansas City, even though we're hopefully getting better with Melissa Johnson. I don't know how that part of this is going to work, but I will say, if he suddenly turns around the violent crime situation in D.C. by just having a more tough on crime approach, that may open up millions of eyes around the country where people are out there and saying to themselves, wait, hold on a second. You mean this is not just like a theory? You mean this can actually work? It could be a game changer when you talk about the politics of urban centers all over America. If it does work and if it works quickly. And boy, do I hope it does. Steven's in Kansas City, Kansas. Go ahead, Steven. You're on KCMO.
Pete, man, we are too spoiled. I tell you what, like decades from now, we'll reminisce about. Remember the time Trump cleared out Washington D.C. in 1 week? He just went on Truth Social and declared it Liberation Day against crime. I mean, I heard this morning that Judge Janine is gonna be doing most of the legal work, which I think is great. I mean, this is in a nutshell. This is part of what I voted for. I mean, I can't speak for a lot of other people, but this is like the stuff that you dream about. You know, the perfect test case of it's federalized. Trump is perfectly all the rules are in his favor because it's a federalized territory. I mean, like you said, this is a test case to show the rest of the country, you know, what we can do. I guarantee you that thing. But my favorite part of the post was he goes, "If you're a criminal, stay right there. We'll get to you. We'll pick you up." Thank you for your attention to that. So if you're a homeless person, you'll get the services you'll need. We'll take you out to the Air Force Base and get you food or education, or we'll put you at the end of the bus line so you won't terrorize anyone. But if you're a criminal, you stay right where you're at. We'll take care of you.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve.
This is just the kind of stuff you just dream about.
Yeah. Thank you, my man. I appreciate it.
People are aroused. I haven't seen people so aroused in a very, very long time.
Stephen is excited on a Monday morning. Listen, my hope that Washington, D.C. gets cleaned up is more about what it can mean for cities all over the country, including here in Kansas City. where we are on a stretch of the deadliest 5-year run in the history of this town, including 2023, which was the worst. And the people in charge still just point to the red state and say those guys are to blame.
We used to have a class called Arts and Ideas at Baker, and you would compare and contrast painting. So you could compare D.C. potentially and contrast it with the New York City thing and Mom Donnie, and we'll see, compare and contrast.
Chicago, Kansas City, L.A., compare them all. If this thing is a big success, we'll find out what the plans are this morning at 9 o'clock. Well, it could be a game changer for urban cores around America. We'll have to wait and see. It is 7:49 as we roll till 8 o'clock on KCMO. It's that time of the week.
It's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly on KCMO Talk Radio. Now on 95.7 FM.
Start with the good. I didn't want to like this, but I'm getting in that college football mode. It's right around the corner. We got that big K-State, Iowa State Week 0 game coming up next Saturday. KU's also playing Week 0. I go on Netflix last night. I finished watching the end of Twister on regular TV just because it was on for like the 267th time. And the new Netflix series, Any Given Saturday, dropped, which follows the SEC, college football. And I didn't want to like it because I hate the SEC. Now, I don't dislike Mizzou. I think Mizzou should be back in the Big 12, but that's a separate story. I've just always hated the SEC because I've always believed that it has been propped up. It's a top-heavy conference that has been propped up by ESPN propaganda for going on 30 years at this point. So I didn't want to like it, but everything Netflix does, these docuseries that they do, are all really well done. So I couldn't help but like it. They build the character. I'm about an episode and a half in. And I don't really care about any of the people in the sense of like it's Tennessee and it's Kentucky and it's South Carolina. And they're following all these teams and coaches and players. And they're not players that I necessarily watch or really care about. But they get you to buy in with their storytelling. And they do such an awesome job at putting these series together. So if you're looking to scratch that college football itch the next week and a half. I don't know if Mizzou gets an appearance. I'm only an episode and a half in. I saw they dropped 7 episodes, I think in the last few days, as I understand it. Maybe I'm late to the ball game on this because I had not been on Netflix in a while. That's what made me realize. I'm like, wait, I'm paying like $18 a month for this thing. Let me see what's on there. I just hadn't been on Netflix in a while. And I was like, if I don't see anything on there, I'm going to cancel it. And then I watched like 7 trailers and buy into this show. So shame on me. I'm back on.
Somehow they know.
I know. It's like they know it.
They know when you've reached your limit.
I know. I'm like, I'm going to go on Netflix and realize there's nothing I want to watch and tell Kate I'm canceling it. And then she comes downstairs and I'm like soaked up in this Any Given Saturday show. And I'm watching it till, 10 o'clock last night when I should have been in bed an hour prior. So there you go. They got me. I'm back in. And I'm ready for the college football season. The bad from the weekend. Kourtney Kardashian getting a mention on this show for the first time ever, but there's a public service announcement involved in this story. Kourtney Kardashian was blasted on social media for a picture she posted on her Instagram of herself holding her 21-month-old child on a boat. And it's supposed to be this cute little photo. She's holding the kid on the boat. The kid's kind of like sleeping on her shoulder. And the kid's not wearing a life jacket as the boat's going at like some high rate of speed. And to her credit, she took a follow-up photo and had her child in a life vest. And she said, hey, thanks to all my followers for realizing I should have had a life vest on the kid. And as we wrap up lake season, I see a lot of you on social media wrapping up a couple of weekends down at the lake. If you got a 21-month-old, my goodness, put him in a freaking life vest. And if Kourtney Kardashian's viral post is that thing that is going to make people realize, geez, if I get on a boat with a little kid, I should put him in a life vest. And if that saves one life, then the roasting of Kourtney Kardashian and me mentioning a Kardashian on this show makes it worth it as far as I'm concerned. All right? Now, the ugly from the weekend. Beto O'Rourke is just trying too hard. So Robert Francis O'Rourke, who was in Kansas City last week, he did a speech, event, whatever you want to call it, rally down at Power at Light. Remember, this guy was like the hot guy of the moment, the it guy for probably a few weeks back in, probably 2019 when he ran for president. He was one of the 37 people that wanted to challenge Donald Trump in 2020. And he made magazine covers. He was going to be the guy that was going to flip Texas blue. Now, Texas is like redder than it's been in a long time based on the most recent election results. But Beto O'Rourke was supposedly the guy that was going to turn Texas blue. He was going to run for governor. He was going to run for U.S. Senate. He ran for president. He did it all. And he's never succeeded. But he's going around the country doing this little mini tour. And now he's going nuts over, of course, the redistricting issue down in Texas, his home state. But he's just trying way too hard. He did it last week in Kansas City when he was comparing Trump to Hitler. It only took him 15 minutes into his speech to do that. And here he was over the weekend going viral and, just saying things that don't need to be said and were completely inappropriate.
We don't await the punch thrown by these would-be fascists to land. We punch first, and we punch harder. We want California and New Jersey and Illinois and Maryland and every other state where the Democrats hold the governor's mansion, the assembly, and the state senate to redraw their congressional districts now, not wait for Texas to move first, to maximize Democratic Party advantage. Listen, you may say to yourself, well, those aren't the rules. There are no refs in this game. The rules. We are going to win whatever it takes. We're going to take this to them in every way that we can.
See, I don't think that's what you want your approach to be if you're Beto O'Rourke. You just don't. Because it's not going to work out well for you because you've already gerrymandered your top states as much as you can. Illinois is like, 14-3? California's got 80% of its seats for the Democrat Party. Massachusetts is a 9-0 state. I don't think that's the approach you want to have if you're Beto O'Rourke because the red states have a lot more gerrymandering that they can do. And he comes off with the cursing like a fake tough guy. And I think I realize what it is about Mayor Pete. Beto O'Rourke. He kind of reminds me of like a gay Pete Buttigieg. See what I did there?
I did. That's kind of a Chris Plant thing there, right? But I repeat myself.
Oh, man. I come to think of it, that's what he reminds me of. I don't know why, but at least Mayor Pete's like a pretty bright guy who can string his sentences together and sounds good. Beto's just a fake tough guy, and it doesn't work. Now, what is Governor Mike Kehoe in Missouri saying about the redistricting efforts in Missouri? Is it going to happen or is it not going to happen? We have the most up-to-date information on Missouri we'll tell you about coming up after the news. Mike Kehoe has spoken. The governor of Missouri has been insistent in a conversation he had with our good friend Scott Fawn of the Missouri Times over the weekend that this redistricting plan in Missouri is not necessarily a done deal. But that's not what I'm hearing. I'm hearing it's all but a done deal. That they will go from a 6-2 map in Missouri for congressional seats to a 7-1 map. Only a matter of when. But Mike Kehoe over the weekend joined our good friend Scott Fawn. And he was down at the state fair. He got an in-person interview with him. And he talked to him on This Week in Missouri Politics. And here's what the governor of Missouri said about the potential redistricting in Missouri.
It doesn't seem like a Mike Kehoe thing.
Well, what does seem like a Mike Kehoe thing is making sure that the Speaker in our U.S. House of Representatives stays there. I mean, Hakeem Jeffries does not match Missouri's values. And as you know, the conversation about the map is not new. It's been going on since 2021. Remember how bogged down the Senate got over the existing map that we ultimately passed? There was a lot of grinding of the teeth in there.
Can you tell Missourians that whatever map is sent to you, it'll be something you approve, not something that's done in Washington?
I can tell Missourians that whatever map that comes to me will be something that I'm in favor of.
You think it's going to happen then?
Well, I would say there's a chance, but there's some moving parts that we've all got to put together, and we're going to work really hard to try to figure out a path.
Governor Kehoe, thank you so much for the time. We got to let you get back to enjoying the state fair.
Hey, thank you for showcasing.
That was the end of the conversation there between Mike Kehoe, the governor of Missouri, and Scott Vaughn from the Missouri Times. And Scott doing a great job with that show as always. So Kehoe is playing it close to the vest when he says, well, we'll have to see how it plays out. My understanding in talking to people is that if it doesn't happen, it would be a shocker. If Missouri does not end up next month when they go back for veto session, also redistricting the state map, it would be a huge upset where they go from a 6-2 to a 7-1 and Cleaver's out. Now, Cleaver has obviously been quoted on this, but he has not been outwardly super vocal about it. There have been a lot of state reps, a lot of state senators who I feel like have been much more outward in front of the cameras speaking publicly about this than what we've seen from Emanuel Cleaver himself. And I'm not clear on whether or not that's because Cleaver has been working hard behind the scenes to try to save himself. I don't know the answer. I have no idea. But it's interesting to me that he has not been front and center. I feel like I've seen more from Quentin Lucas on this than I have Emanuel Cleaver. And I don't know if that's because Lucas is like, hey, that's my gig coming up in a couple of years, or why he is more vocal about it. But Cleaver, it feels like to me, has been kind of sitting on the sidelines a little bit here, John, which has surprised me.
I see. Well, the more I would hear from him, the more likely I would be inclined to go for redistricting, on the other hand.
Well, to his credit,
mm-hmm.
maybe that's exactly it.
He had an initial statement.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What, first day, first week in there?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's it, to your point. Everybody else is doing all the barking.
That's where the self-awareness factor matters. And I'm not saying Emanuel Cleaver's the most self-aware guy.
You mustard moo.
I mean, he was that guy too. So there's only so much self-awareness to go around. But you compare that to Quentin Lucas, who sometimes can be his own worst enemy, right? When Quentin Lucas gets loud and barky, it just pisses off Jeff City. And then they get annoyed, and then they do things on purpose just to spite Quentin Lucas. That has happened between the mayor of Kansas City and the state legislature. Sometimes just being quiet, putting your head down, and minding your own business can be the best thing that you do for your own self-preservation. And I don't know if that's what Cleaver's doing here or what exactly is going on. But if it is, then you know what? I'll give the guy some credit, John.
Yeah, well, if he had another 10 years in office, maybe he would be barking a little louder, right? But, he's ridden the gravy train about to the last stop.
Yeah. He's been on that gravy train for a long time. Ain't that the truth as well? But he is a guy who would he would have his hand-picked successor, right? I do think that for the last few years, Emanuel Cleaver, who's, if he's not 80, he's approaching it. He's been looking at this and saying to himself, okay, what does my off-ramp look like? When does it happen? And who exactly do I want to replace me? And I promise you, no matter what they say about each other publicly, Emanuel Cleaver is not going to be the guy that picks Quentin Lucas to be his successor. And I know the mayor always gets mad when I say that there's, not a lot of love lost between the two, but I promise you that's the case. Emanuel Cleaver does not want Quentin Lucas to be in that seat if that seat remains as is or is still a somewhat winnable seat for Republicans. That's not something that he wants to see happen. So now you tie it back to what's likely going to happen. And either way, Quentin Lucas may actually be better suited for this new made-up 5th congressional district than what it currently is, where it's more of a blue district, obviously. But if it becomes red-ish, Quentin Lucas may say, you know what, I'm going for it because I'll appeal to some moderates. He may go that route, John.
Well, I was checking to see if there were any American Association baseball franchises in the D.C. area to see if Frank could pick up a little extra bucks. Should he be the chosen individual?
No.
See, better the devil you know sometimes, right?
No.
Maybe Frank's so confident in his current position because he thinks he's got another one coming up.
Would you stop giving our worst politicians really bad ideas around here?
Oh, it's so bad. I'm sure it occurred to him already.
I know, but stop with that. On the text line, 913-408-7957, Pete, Cleaver might be eyeing the retirement. It's time to get back into the car wash business. Oh, come on now. Come on, Doug. Come on. Come on. I needed a car wash joke somewhere in there. Someone had to make it for me. No, you gotta stay in Congress and ride the taxpayer gravy train to pay off the car wash loan. That's how this works.
Well, there is a big infrastructure project in Grandview running from Blue Ridge, and it'll go past the place there, so maybe get his final project in.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. So, when it comes to Kehoe, I think he knows he's going to ruffle a lot of feathers. But if you're Mike Kehoe, are you going to be the guy right now that basically tells Trump to pound sand when you got to win one more election to be a two-term governor in Missouri? If he was in his second term, Kehoe might try to figure out a way out of this thing. But if he doesn't do this, you know and I know how the game ends. Trump finds a candidate to primary Kehoe in 2028, and he'll get his doors blown off. You know that Bill Eigel or somebody else would line up to be the next governor and would lobby to Trump and say, I'll be your guy, I'll get a 7-1 map and, yada, 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 and then Kehoe's toast. So he knows that's part of the game here. Not saying it's fair, not saying it's right, but it's where the political landscape is right now in this country, especially inside of the Republican Party. So what do you do if you're Mike Kehoe? How do you balance this thing to say, well, I don't think a 7-1 map is the play, if that's how he feels deep down? And he's saying all the, air quotes, right things. Well, Missouri's not a Hakeem Jeffries state. No, I get it, but that's not really necessarily how the Speaker of the House decision works, right? As long as you figure out a way that you still have the 5th district and then also Sam Graves' district and then also Mark Alford's district to be R plus double digits, that's what you got to do right now. If they can draw that map, then it takes away the concern that you're going to create 3 purple districts on the western side of Missouri. If you can figure that out, then I guess it's game on. But if you can't, if that path does not exist, then you got to be careful what you wish for. Big week ahead. We found out late last week that the president going to be meeting later this week in Alaska with Vladimir Putin. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News Radio, joining us on KCMO Talk Radio in Kansas City. Tanya, good morning. What do we know right now about this meeting scheduled for Friday?
Hey, good morning. Well, we know that it is set, Trump and Putin. At this point, it does not include Zelensky or Ukraine in general. That has also kind of caused some consternation among some of the European leaders. Matter of fact, there were coordinated statements from 7 European leaders as well as Zelensky. And basically it said that Kyiv can't be sidelined in any talks over ending Russia's invasion. Like I said, the 2 parties now do not include the Ukrainians there on Friday. The president has also, President Trump has suggested that land swaps could be part of a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine has firmly rejected giving any of the Ukrainian land over to Russia, who, as we remember, invaded it. They won't do that without any security guarantees or arms for Ukraine, stuff like that. Now, the vice president did talk some about the the scheduled meeting, on Fox on Sunday morning features this weekend, and said that, he didn't think it was a good idea for Putin and Zelensky to meet before Trump meets with Putin on Friday. But he did say that he thinks that the 3 should sit down at some point and have such a meeting, that the White House is working to schedule it to see when they can get together and discuss a plan forward.
So is there a sense that Putin even taking this meeting means that he is holding a weak hand, so to speak, or is that an inaccurate interpretation of what the world is assessing right now as to why Putin would even agree to this?
That's a really good question, because at this point, up to now, he hasn't been directly, involved in these things. These have been the stuff we've seen so far. Even a few months ago with Secretary of State Rubio, he sat down with Russian, representatives. So it was not, at the highest level at that point either. So the fact that he is apparently going to be, part of this is significant. You're right about that. Zelensky has said that, he posted on social media over the weekend, and this is a quote. He said, Russia is doing everything to prolong hostilities. It refuses to stop the killings despite announced deadlines and is trying to bargain for better positions on the ground for future strikes. It says that, goes on to say that Ukraine is ready to work as productively as possible with all partners for the sake of real peace. And this is the part that really kind of hits the crux of the whole thing. Matters concerning Ukraine must be decided with Ukraine's participation. As for Putin, he hasn't been to the U.S. since 2015 and hasn't met with Trump since 2019. So, it's significant that he is apparently going to be in Alaska for this meeting.
So with Zelensky, is there a belief that Trump should talk to him this week before he goes and meets with Putin? If Zelensky's not going to be there, do you think that is the very least that will end up happening? Or is this just going to be Trump doing his thing and going to meet with Putin and then, go from there?
It could go either way, honestly. There is an eternity of time between now and Friday. It sounds soon. But as we all know, the way that things move, especially with this administration, especially in these news cycles now, there is no telling what could happen in the next 24 hours, much less now before, Friday. He could, there could be a phone call. We might find out, after the fact that, there's a phone call between him and Zelensky. I would imagine at some point the Ukrainians would probably get, in touch with the U.S. folks and be like, hey, this is what we insist on this. Or this is what we really want, or hey, invite us to the table at the very least. So that is possible that could be happening, and we find out about it, afterwards. There are still a lot of, weapons that are being bought from America by European countries, and NATO allies that are, to supply more weapons to Ukraine, especially those Patriot air defense systems, the missiles, the ammunition. All of those are made by the U.S. So these countries are having to, buy them from the U.S. in order to, give them to Ukraine to help bolster their position. And like I said, the European leaders have already stressed that Ukraine needs to be part of any talks for its own peace deal anyway.
Tanya J. Powers, Fox News Radio here as the president gets set to meet with President Putin coming up on Friday in Alaska. Do we have any idea yet, Tanya, how exactly Alaska, from a security perspective, is preparing for any of this? I mean, this has got to be the biggest thing that happened in Alaska since I don't know when, maybe ever, since it became a state. So do you have any idea yet on what that side of this equation and this meeting looks like?
That is one of the things I'm hoping to find out in the next couple of days. I know that our White House correspondent, Jared Halpern, has been on this from the beginning and knows all of the details. I don't know if they have released, kind of the inner workings of the schedule yet of exactly how this is going to go. But yeah, I'm kind of interested in that as well. Like, no truth to the rumor that Sarah Palin's having him over to her house.
Oh, gosh. Well, we'll be following this week. It's going to be a very interesting week. See how it develops. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News Radio here on KCMO. Last thing, Tanya, what do you mentioned that the European leaders want to make sure that this is something that they have at least a little bit of input in. What do you expect to hear from them this week ahead of the meeting?
Well, like I said, they've already put out the first statement about, the fact that they really wanted to make sure that Ukraine was not, kind of, bowled over with this. It was signed. The statement was signed by the president of the EU, the leaders of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Finland, and the UK. And it said that there needed to be not only a just and lasting peace for Kyiv, that was one of the quotes, but a robust and credible security guarantee. It said Ukraine has the freedom of choice over its own destiny, and I think that's one of the things that somehow kind of from time to time gets lost in all of this when we hear about talks between Russia and the U.S. over what to do about Ukraine. Ukraine is a sovereign nation; they get to decide their own destiny, which is one of the things that these European countries are pointing out in the plainest terms possible.
Gotcha. Well, Tanya, thank you for being here on KCMO. We'll be in touch as the week goes along. Appreciate the time. There you go. Tanya J. Powers. Great to have her on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. That is one worth watching. Zelensky, though, he's got to understand that while, yes, they're a sovereign nation and they get to decide their own future in terms of whether or not there is some deal with Russia. They are so reliant on us that, we have to help lead the conversation. I'm sorry, that's totally appropriate. And no one's been able to figure out what the off-ramp is here for anybody, right? And I understand, Zelensky has every right to feel the way he does. He's trying to defend his country from what has been an invasion. But at the same time, sometimes actually having that outside voice to say, let's cut a deal. Let's save lives. Let's help everybody out here. Can be very beneficial for all involved. Country music singer Zach Bryan has ticked off all of Kansas City, but you know who I have a bigger problem with is Patrick Mahomes' trainer, who just can't get off of social media. He just can't. If you Google or look up the story if you haven't seen it, Zach Bryan got into it with Chiefs fans over the weekend on social media, and he came out and said that he would never play again in Kansas City. Why? He's an Eagles fan. He posted on social media over the weekend. And where are all the three-peat people from last year? And we know that was in reference to the Chiefs trying to three-peat for the first time in NFL history. So Chiefs fans start responding. It goes into the gutter because that's what social media is. Everyone's a tough talker. Trust me, I know it and see it firsthand all the time. Just go into my mentions. You can see them there. But one of the people who dropped into Zach Bryan's mentions was Bobby Stroud, who is Patrick Mahomes' trainer. So Zach Bryan says in response to someone, please understand, I will never play in Kansas City. Now, apparently he was here in 2023 at T-Mobile, and he had 20,000 fans there. So I'm not sure that he's actually never going to come back to Kansas City. If he can make money, money talks. I'm sure he'll be back, if it makes sense. But for now, he's doing a whole thing of, I can't stand the Chiefs. I'm an Eagles fan. Chiefs fans are being mean to me. It's like, dude, you'd opened up the can of worms. You know how people are on social media. They're going to be tough talkers, and you got to deal with it. You started the whole thing. No one went after you. But why? 3 weeks after, he gets Keatsman worldwide news. And let's be clear, when Keatsman went off on Mahomes' dad bod on his podcast, that thing got amplified by a couple of social media accounts, and then Mahomes' trainer responding to him was the thing that just set this deal off to the moon. And Kevin and I, we've talked about it. He's talked about it. I mean, that's what actually made this thing larger than life. Mahomes' trainer getting in the mentions and responding is what took the story to the next level. And now you've got Mahomes' trainer once again in Zach Bryan's mentions after he says, please understand I'll never play in Kansas City. Bobby Stroud says, you must know we don't care then. It's like, dude, can you just be a trainer and get off social media? What is the point of the trainer getting into the biggest social media spats happening with Chiefs fans on whatever the topic is? It's like, just focus on the squats and the deadlifts and the bench press and make sure the guy's in the best shape possible for a big year as he's set to turn 30 years old, trying to get back and win a Super Bowl. Just please focus on that. I don't want to hear from trainers. I don't want to know trainers. I don't want to be able to cite their names. Those guys and gals are best out of sight, out of mind, not being a topic of conversation, and having nobody know who they are. Can you name a single other trainer for a professional athlete in this country right now? Because I can't. I can't. And that's how I like my trainers, John. I want them out of sight and out of mind.
All
That's
I could think of was Richard Simmons, rest his soul. But you had a professional athlete, and I'm like, oh, no, that won't work.
You know what? Close enough. There's one guy I went to high school with who played college baseball who now does some training for some lower-level pro athletes, but no one else knows him. I just know him because I went to high school with him.
I know Nebraska quarterback Dylan Raiola, his trainer is also Bobby Stroop.
Oh, well, same guy then.
Yeah, same guy.
Same guy. It's like, dude, please don't make yourself the topic of conversation again. You did it once. You had to go back and delete all your posts about Keatsman. And now, like, you're trying to once again be the everyman for the Chiefs fans, but it's like, come on, man. That's not your role. You're not going. The only way that you are beloved as Patrick Mahomes' trainer is if he stays healthy, you help keep him healthy, and he has a great season. That's it. Nobody cares about your social media. No one's interested in your social media. And if you have enough time to get into all of these different spats, then you've got too much time on your hands. Like, go fix Raiola up there at Nebraska. Mark, you're a Nebraska guy. I know there's big expectations up there, but let's be honest. They've had big expectations for the last 10 years, and they've fallen flat on their faces every single year.
Oh, yeah. He'd have a big year this year.
We'll see. Matt Rule's he turns programs around. But I got to see it to believe it up there at Big Red, because they've had the talent before, and they just can't hack it in the Big Ten, man. They just can't get it done, it seems like.
This kid Raiola is a copycat of Mahomes. He wears number 15, has the same old haircut.
I know. He's a cheeseball.
Does a little pregame jump thing.
He's a cheeseball. I'm rooting against them just because I think that guy's a massive tool.
I like him.
Because you're a fan of Nebraska, or because you like him?
I think he's a good quarterback.
Is he, though?
He looks like he can be.
He looks like he can be.
He was a freshman last year, so I'll give him that.
He looks like he can be. Okay, thank you for that. Now, meantime, we did have the Chiefs, of course, take the field over the weekend in their first preseason game. And I flipped it on. We had the girls back from a little pool party we had, showering them up, drying the hair, the whole thing. I'm like, wait, it's 7 o'clock. Got to turn on the game. Let's go. We flip on the game right as the Chiefs kick it off. And we see the fumble by Arizona. Mm-hmm. Chiefs recover. And then 3 plays later, you get a touchdown.
A couple more, yeah.
Yeah, right after that. And my oldest, she was like watching the game, and she's into it. She's like, oh, the Chiefs are back. I'm trying to explain this is a practice game, though, right? Mm-hmm. And explaining that to a 6-year-old is difficult. But I'm explaining to her, it's like, yeah, when we scrimmage at your soccer practice, it's like the same old kind of thing. Oh, okay, I get it. But why is there another team? It's not really a scrimmage. I'm like, oh, that's a good point. Now I got to try to.
Got you, Dad.
I got to figure out how to explain this whole thing. But her assessment at 6 years old is that she didn't like Patrick's facial hair. She's off the facial hair goatee train, whatever he's got going there.
Right. She's got standards.
And she misses the long hair. Those were the 2 takeaways from the 6-year-old after the first drive on Saturday night. And I said, you know what? That's really all you got to take away from a preseason game, because there's not much else to come out of it,
My mother-in-law came in for the second half, and she was shocked that the Chiefs lost. I said, it doesn't matter. It's not a big deal.
Well, it's funny. Claire said to me, she goes, she went to bed around 8. She said, are you going to watch the rest of the game? I said, yeah, probably. She said, what about me? I said, well, I'll record it. We can watch it in the morning. So in the morning, she comes down on Sunday. It's like 7 o'clock. She's the first one up with me and the baby. And we watch the plays. YouTube TV now has this great app where you can just watch all the important plays, and it'll take you all of 10, 15 minutes or so.
Yep.
So we watched 32 plays. The Chiefs end up losing. And she's like, they lost. What is going on here? I'm like, it doesn't matter. They're playing Bailey Zappi at quarterback here by the end of the game, okay? It's going to be all right. Don't worry about it. We can't name anybody on the field right now. It's going to be just fine. But it was a lot of fun to have football back. I'm not going to lie. I thoroughly enjoyed putting on the television and seeing some kind of football that I care about, because it really is America's sport, and it's not even close right now. I mean, you look at the ratings, regular season football blows out Major League Baseball playoffs, NBA playoffs. I mean, it is just night and day. So we're going to be back into the swing of things here coming up in just, I guess we got Friday, September 5th, week 1. Kickoff for the Chiefs on a Friday night. I hate that, but, it is what it is with the NFL.
Game this Friday night.
And this Friday night, yeah, another preseason game coming up. Olathe, that's where Mike is. What's up, Mike?
Yeah, based on what I just heard from Mark and from Claire, the Chiefs are going to lose because Mahomes doesn't look as good, but Nebraska is going to go undefeated and win the national championship because that dude looks good.
Let's go.
Yeah.
That is some expert analysis. I think you guys, that's brilliant, Mark. Way to go. And Claire, too. But I would go with Claire more because I still think the Chiefs are going to be fine. But Nebraska. That dude is a tool, man. He needs to get over himself up in Nebraska because he could be good.
It's cool to replicate guys like when they're not playing anymore as like a throwback to the old days. But when the guy you're replicating is in his prime and you're not only trying to play like him, like everyone wanted to play like Michael Jordan when I was a kid in the 90s. But if you were actually really talented and you literally mimicked everything from sticking your tongue out to socks to shoes to everything else to the attire, then it's like, dude, that's just getting kind of creepy is what it is. It's just getting weird and creepy.
Daddy, you're my daddy.
On the text line, Pete, a trainer can't have an opinion? You're being an elitist. I didn't say he couldn't have an opinion when it comes to Mahomes' trainer. I'm saying don't air it out on social media. Absolutely have an opinion. But there's a place to have an opinion. Mahomes has a lot of opinions. He's not airing out his Donald Trump opinions on social media because that wouldn't make a lot of sense and be good for the brand right now. Picking and choosing your spots and knowing whether or not you need to have a big presence on social media on nonsense is an important part of the job. And if you're Mahomes' trainer, the only thing that you should be doing on social media is posting videos of the most famous athlete on the planet working out. That's your best branding tool. That's it. 913-408-7957. It's 8:46 as the rain has come in across Kansas City. Here we go. Another morning of rain. What, second, third straight day of that, it seems like? We've got a lot more to get to here on 95.7 FM. We're always streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. All right, if you live in one of our area counties, you may have gotten something in the mail the last few days. I got mine, and there's more to come on this. And you have got to get in front of it right now. I'll explain next.
Dave Ramsey here, and you're listening to Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio, now airing on FM at 95.7.
Big mistake by me last night. Bunch of mail sitting on the island, and I'm like, I'll crack one of these open. This one looks kind of important. And shouldn't have opened it because it just ruined the end of my weekend. It was the proposed property tax increases by all of the taxing jurisdictions. It was Johnson County. It was the city of Olathe. It was the school district. It was the state of Kansas. And I open up this piece of mail, and to the state of Kansas's credit, this is part of a bill that passed a few years ago where now they have to basically tell you what the proposed property tax increase is from each of these taxing jurisdictions, and they tell you when these entities are going to meet, if they have to meet, to potentially finalize their budgets that will increase your property taxes by X amount of dollars. So you'll all get this in the mail on the Kansas side of the state line. And make sure you open that piece of mail. I don't know when it came. I just kind of, open the mail every couple of days, few days. Kate usually grabs it, and then I see my stack sitting there, and then I, at some point, get around to opening it because it's never fun. It's always just bills or something. Don't get me wrong. I pay all my bills on time. I'm a Dave Ramsey guy. But I do let it linger for a couple of days and just figure I'll get to it when I get to it.
Mine's supposed to come in the mail today. I have a thing that I get an email that shows me what pieces of mail are coming in, so I know if I actually need to check it or not.
Oh, that's nice. Now, the Postal Service, what's their hit rate on those? I mean, they say something's coming tomorrow and it shows up in 7 weeks. How does that work?
Every morning it shows me what's actually coming.
Oh, so, what's coming that day?
That day, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So they can't screw that up too much.
Yeah, hopefully not.
All right. Well, make sure you look at yours right away, Mark, and make sure you're in a good frame of mind when you do it. Okay?
Yeah, I'm not excited, but I'll open it.
Yeah, please don't be. You won't be. Because when I open it, here's what I see. Johnson County, city of Olathe, state of Kansas, the worst offenders. Now, the state of Kansas, the number is really small because most of your property taxes don't go to the state. They go to your city. They go to your county, they go to your schools. But you look at the state, the city, and the county, and they all are proposing increasing property taxes by 5% on a dollar figure. I don't care about mill rates. No one's thinking about mill rates when they're paying their taxes. They're thinking about what the actual dollar figure is. And while that may be less than what we've seen over the last half a decade or so, remember this. Inflation for the last 12 months was 2.7%. The proposal on average calls for these jurisdictions to get a 4.8% increase based on my math and crunching the numbers. So they want 75% more than what inflation is. In Johnson County, in my case in Olathe, and from the state of Kansas. They want a 75% increase over the rate of inflation. They can't help themselves. How do you think Johnson County goes from a budget of $900 million less than a decade ago to now a proposed budget of $1.9 billion with a B? $1.9 billion. And I know some of you on the Missouri side are going to say, boy, come on over here to Jackson County. You know what real tax screw jobs are like. Yeah, that's not really the point. Okay, just because there's total incompetency, that's going to result in, I believe, the recall of the county executive doesn't mean that, well, at least Johnson County is not as bad as Jackson. To me, that doesn't really matter. And we shouldn't view our governments through the prism of, at least they're not as bad as those guys. We should expect better. We should expect some level of fiscal responsibility and sanity. And none of these folks have it anymore. Johnson County, that ship sailed a long time ago. They don't care one bit. Same issue when it comes to many of the cities in Johnson County. Olathe, Overland Park, Lenexa, they're all the same. They are growing government at rapid rates. And they had a built-in excuse the last few years saying, well, inflation's out of control. We got to pay people. We got to pay more for this. Costs are up, everything else. They had a built-in excuse. And it was always an excuse, but at least it worked. And they never said, like, boy, we got to figure out how to pinch our pennies and we got to figure out what to do to make sure that we are not soaking the taxpayer. They got a lot going on right now. It was always inflation's up. We have to do this. They never said, maybe we don't need a new courthouse in downtown Olathe. They never said, maybe we don't need a new health department building on 119th and Ridgeview area. They never said any of that. They just used inflation as an excuse. I don't know what their excuse is going to be now. I'm sure they'll find one. But it's absurd to sit there and look at these increases and not be wildly offended if you're a taxpayer who has been soaked by your city and your county in this region over the last half decade. And they do show meeting times when they're going to approve these budgets, so you can go to these meetings depending on your city and your county, and make sure you look that up as well. We are monitoring a press conference that will be happening momentarily from the President of the United States, as he will be, according to reports, Reuters has it here, that he is going to be involving the National Guard and sending and deploying hundreds of troops to Washington. A U.S. official told Reuters. As they write here, a controversial tactic that Trump used recently in Los Angeles to respond to immigration protests over the objections of local officials. Boy, that's a hell of a way to put it.
Law and order is always a controversial tactic to the left.
Keeping people safe and lowering a crime rate that is out of control in a major American city is definitely going to bother a lot of common sense folks. No, it's going to bother the capital J journalists at Reuters and maybe the opinion editors at like the Kansas City Star. But trust me, not many others are going to be bothered by this, okay? So they write here at Reuters, over the past week, Trump has intensified his messaging, demanding the swift eviction of homeless residents and vowing to jail offenders. He has raised the prospect of stripping the city of its local autonomy and signaled a possible full federal takeover. See, here's what they're scared to death of. They're scared to death of the possibility that Trump's plans of law and order actually work. Because if Trump says, we're going to flood the zone, we're sending in National Guard troops, we're going to help local law enforcement, who I guarantee you deep down want it, at least the men and women on the streets want it, they'll take all the help they can get. If it works, then that is going to be such a blow to leadership in Chicago, to leadership in New York, L.A., and right here in Kansas City, where we had our 100th homicide of the year take place over the weekend. We lost a 16-year-old girl who was just shot in her home. She wasn't out on the streets. It was about 10 p.m. at 36th and Norton, reports of a shooting. And when the officers showed up, they found 16-year-old Traylon Sibley unresponsive. And she succumbed to her gunshot wounds when emergency personnel arrived. We are on what is going to end up being the most violent and deadly half-a-decade run in Kansas City history. 2023 was our deadliest year yet. We are ahead of last year's pace as well, which was not the worst year in Kansas City history, but was right up there in the top 5. We're on that pace. And if Trump is able to bring in the National Guard, help out local law enforcement, have huge success in bringing down violent crime in Washington, D.C., well, suddenly those people in some of the most urban parts of our country who insist that it's state gun laws or gun dealers or, whatever else they want to point to for why crime is out of control, and not the fact that they're short on cops because they can't recruit them because they tried to defund the police 5 years ago. They've got woke prosecutors who will not enforce the law, who slap criminals on the wrist, and judges also who are just as guilty as the prosecutors in too many cases. If they don't want to actually talk about those things, and they just keep pointing the finger at gun laws and the Second Amendment and their governors and their state legislatures, well, if Trump has success, they lose all those talking points. Every single one of them. And that's the biggest reason they don't want to see this thing take off. They want absolutely no part of it. They do not want to see this administration say, you know what, no, we're going full-blown law and order. And you're going to see what this actually looks like. Nope, no way, no how do they want to see that work. So in the meantime, we're going to have to wait and see what the President of the United States has to say. The briefing room is packed to the gills right now. I can see the screen here on Fox as we wait for the President of the United States to talk about this. And I know, I don't think this is just a D.C. story. I think if you are in a city, and we're in one here in Kansas City, that has seen rampant, out-of-control, violent crime for far too long, and you've seen too many times local leaders blame all these different things besides the men and women in the mirror. Quentin Lucas not calling out Gene Peters Baker, his prosecutor for all these years in Jackson County. For whatever reason, he didn't want to do it. I don't know why. He had far more political capital than she ever had in this town, at least the last few years he did as the mayor, and he didn't want to touch her. I don't know what photos she had or what the deal was, but he did not want to touch Mean Gene. And I think it cost people in this community, cost them their lives. I'll never understand why he did not use his bully pulpit to call out an awful Jackson County prosecutor. Now he's got hopefully a better one in there, Melissa Johnson. That was his hand-picked successor. But we'll have to wait and see what exactly she's going to be able to do to try to stem that violent crime tide. And I'm going to give her time. She's not going to fix this thing overnight because she's got to, first off, clean up her prosecutor's office. She's got to figure out what she's working with judges-wise. And she's got to kind of reset the relationship with the police department as well. So there's all that's got to be figured out. But there are definitely good signs that we've seen a few months in, even if the numbers at the top level are not quite there yet. It's like a football team, If you have an NFL team, let's say you get a new head coach, and that first year, the record doesn't show it. The record might still be 6-11, but you're losing one-score games. You're right in it at the very end. Even though your record doesn't show that you've dramatically improved, if you watch the games, you see the improvement. You're laying the foundation for years to come. I think you're seeing some of that with Melissa Johnson, which is encouraging to me. And as soon as the president takes the podium, we'll take some of that here on KCMO Talk Radio. Did you see we had the, on a much lighter note and on the baseball front, speaking of football analogies, baseball analogy works as well. But did you see we had the first female umpire in Major League Baseball behind home plate over the weekend? Jem Powell makes Major League Baseball history as the first female umpire. And you can't make this script up. I guess you could. This would be right out of the Babylon Bee. The first pitch that she calls in a Major League Baseball game was off the plate by like 4 inches, and she called it a strike. Tell me you saw it. Mark, I know you saw it. I know you did.
I didn't see the actual call, but I heard about it.
It was bad. I mean, this thing, and here's the thing. She's called the game. The first pitch is clearly inside, and she's like, strike! And the batter is like, kind of wants to throw his hands up. He's clearly disgusted by the call. But then he realizes in real time, he can't be the guy in that moment, this historic, air quotes, moment that Major League Baseball is hyper-focused on. He can't be the guy that starts yelling at the female ump on the first ball strike call that she makes in her career. He can't do it. So he just kind of looks down and shakes his head, and he's just shaking it in total, utter disgust. And I'm like, man, this is like the stuff that the Babylon Bee dreams about right now. This thing was 4 inches off the plate. They had the strike zone thing on the camera so you could see it on the TV. It wasn't even all that close. It's not like it was right on the line on the inside of the plate. It was off by at least 3 inches.
So she's not much different than the other umps in the league.
That's fair. That's fair. That's okay. All right. That's fair. She's taken after Angel Hernandez, who would probably be the worst umpire in Major League Baseball history. Do you remember, who was it? Armando Galarraga, I think was his name. He had the perfect game for the Tigers that was blown by an umpire at first base. One of my good buddies growing up has not watched a full game of Major League Baseball since then because he still is ticked off about how that went down. Still to this day, he will, and to his credit, I think he's held up his end of the bargain. I'd have to look up what year that was, but I'm almost, that's got to be going back 15 years. Yeah, June of 2010. First base umpire Jim Joyce called the runner safe, and it blew the perfect game from Armando Galarraga with the Detroit Tigers on June 2nd of 2010, and he's held up his end of the bargain. He's also a Yankees fan, and they're having a tough time anyway, so screw him, as far as I'm concerned. Still awaiting the President of the United States. He is set to address the nation here in the next few minutes. At least that's the plan, talking about his crime plan in Washington, D.C. And I think that there are ramifications for major American cities across the country, including us here in Kansas City. Now, all eyes are on Texas and the redistricting down there, but Missouri may be next up. That is expected to happen potentially next month, when Republicans will have their veto session down in Jeff City. Everybody's going to go back, and they may have a special session to redistrict Missouri from 6 to 2 to 7 to 1 GOP House seats to Democrat House seats, and squeeze out Emanuel Cleaver here in Kansas City. So it's gotten a lot of national attention, obviously, and now we've got a major local element to the story as well that we're following here. Yesterday on Meet the Press, I would not have expected this on Meet the Press, but they called out Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker to his face for his massively gerrymandered state as he fights back against Texas. And he could be doing the same thing for Missouri here, but he was totally clueless on what to say when he got hit by Kristen Welker, who said this.
Every major group that grades the fairness of congressional maps gives your state an F. Common Cause, a nonpartisan government watchdog, even says your map, and I'm going to quote, represents a nearly perfect model for everything that can go wrong with redistricting. And I guess the question is, you talk about preserving democracy. How do you preserve democracy if you're using the same tactics that you've criticized Texas Republicans for?
That's a great question.
But as I say, what they're talking about is a distraction. The reality is that the violation of people's voting rights is what Texas is attempting to do. That's what's wrong with their efforts right now. And the fact that the President of the United States knows it and nevertheless is asking them to do it. That is what's wrong with what we're seeing right now. Democracy is at stake.
Of course, when all else fails, you go back to the old democracy's at stake. Hey, Pritzker, aren't you a huge hypocrite? Yeah, but democracy's at stake. When the other guys do it, you see democracy's at stake. When I draw a line from southwest Missouri all the way up to Chicago and call it a congressional district, that's not democracy at stake. That's just good old-fashioned redistricting. When Texas considers it, when Missouri potentially does it here in the next few weeks, that is democracy being at stake. You understand the rules here, John?
And, of course, you nailed it when you said he's a huge hypocrite.
Oh, massive. He's also huge.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
there you go. You
yes.
nailed it.
He is huge and a hypocrite and a huge hypocrite.
But I digress.
Yes, he is all of the above. The fact that this guy thinks he's presidential material tells you how out of line these egos are in some of these states with some of these politicians. I mean, there's nothing about J.B. Pritzker that screams presidential. I mean, I guess if you're comparing him to Tim Walz and Kamala Harris, you might come away with that conclusion. But boy, that is a very low bar. Very low bar. So the fact that he was called out by Kristen Welker, who said, you guys get an F in your state for gerrymandered districts, and you're the first guy jumping on television saying, oh boy, democracy's at stake in Texas. Listen, that's the best argument Missouri has. I told you why I don't think it's the best move for the state of Missouri. But there's no doubt about it. The best argument that is out there is, well, they're doing it in all these blue states. Massachusetts is 9-0. We've gone down the list. Democrats are overrepresented in a lot of these blue states in terms of House seats and House membership. So, you know what? we're going to give him the same treatment on our end. Now, none of this stopped Beto O'Rourke. He was here in Kansas City last week going off. He, of course, ran for president, ran for U.S. Senate, ran for governor in Texas. You know, he's going off on this thing. He's doing this little tour around the country. I don't know why, but he was down at Power and Light last week, John, and now he's going elsewhere, kind of shooting the same old shtick.
You know, it's appropriate. We have a penchant for calling Missouri, Missouri.
Yeah.
Beto should be Beta. Right? Beta? Beta
Show
O'Rourke.
some RESPICT.
That's very good. Beta Boy Beto? How's that sound? Does that work for you? Beta Boy Beto, Robert Francis? I think that's obviously his real name. So he goes off over the weekend, and he just let it rip. Very, very inappropriate from Beta.
We don't await the punch thrown by these would-be fascists to land. We punch first, and we punch harder. We want California and New Jersey and Illinois and Maryland and every other state where the Democrats hold the governor's mansion, the assembly, and the state senate to redraw their congressional districts now, not wait for Texas to move first, to maximize Democratic Party advantage. Listen, you may say to yourself, well, those aren't the rules. There are no refs in this game. F*** the rules. We are going to win whatever it takes. We're going to take this to them in every way that we can.
You know, I can't sit here and say I'm offended by the language because Trump will do that too, right? Trump will do that. He'll go there, and you're like, you kind of roll your eyes. But there's something about when Trump does it versus when Beta does it, or even Republicans do it. Any of these politicians who try to be like Trump with the gruff attitude, with the approach, it just doesn't work. And I can't exactly pinpoint it, but there's something about the way that Trump does it with almost a twinkle in his eye that makes it mildly endearing. That just doesn't work when Beta does it there, or even other Republicans try to mimic it. It just doesn't work. But over the weekend, it was Friday night, we were wrapping up, before bed. The girl said, "Can we watch a couple music videos?" So I put on YMCA, right? And then I said, "Do you want to see Donald Trump, President Trump, dance the YMCA?" And they're like, yeah, woo, that's awesome, Dad. Let's see the president dance the YMCA. So I go on YouTube on the TV and I pull up, I just put in like Trump YMCA. And I pick one of the first videos. And it was like the end of a speech. And Trump's like, "We're going to get CNN, those bunch of dirty bleeps." And I'm like, oh no. And I quickly X out of the video, and then it like leads into him wrapping up and dancing to YMCA. But of course, they're playing like the last 15 seconds of the speech, and he curses, and I'm just trying to play a YMCA Trump dance for my 6 and 4-year-old, and they drop a bleep in there on me, and I'm like, oh no. And they're like, "Dad, what's wrong with that one?" I'm like, we're going to find a better one. Don't worry. It's going to be all right. 9:33, all eyes remain on the White House as the president is set to address the nation on his D.C. crime-fighting plan. We'll monitor that here on KCMO. But there could also be ties for Kansas City, right? We've dealt with this issue for far too long. We reached 100 homicides over the weekend. That's 33 of the last 40 years. We've had at least 100 homicides in Kansas City. We've easily passed that number every year under Mayor Lucas, sad to say, including 2023, which was our worst year ever for homicides in Kansas City at 182. So the question becomes, well, what if President Trump, through a law and order approach in Washington, D.C., has massive success? Could that approach be taken in other major American cities? Could the National Guard be utilized here in Kansas City like it was 5 years ago with Operation Legend, put forth by Bill Barr, the former head of the DOJ, and President Trump at the time? And you saw, for the next couple of months, a massive decrease in violent crime. They got hundreds of criminals off the streets. They got hundreds of illegal weapons off the streets as well. And it was a massive success. Of course, it was only temporary. But this led to our caller of the day on KCMO.
Hello? It's the Mundo in the Morning Caller of the Day on KCMO Talk Radio. Now on FM at 95.7.
Go to John. He's on KCMO. Go ahead, John. What's happening?
Hey, Pete. Yeah, you talked about some of the stuff I was going to say, too. Not only did he go to war against the state legislators, he went to war against the local department here. You know, he fought against them. He said he didn't defund them, but he did everything he could to try to defund them. He fought to get rid of the police chief. He fought against the jail, getting a new jail built to put some of these offenders, low-level offenders, away that graduate into these higher crimes. And as a man of color in the community that is having most of these issues, he has not used his pulpit to go forth and address any of the cultural issues that are going on about the lack of fatherhood or, you know, things that they just need to change within the community to hold everybody more accountable.
Yeah.
He's just been vacant.
And
he hasn't done anything for that.
And say what you
to
want.
Say that he can't do anything is just a lie. He has not done anything towards that means at all.
That's John in North Kansas City. And listen, say whatever you want about Quentin Lucas, but married father with 2 kids, he's certainly living the life that if more people lived, they would not be caught up in a life of crime. And Barack Obama was the guy who could have been the figure who really transitioned us into a new era of encouraging, especially in certain places, as the first black president, the importance of fatherhood in the urban core. Could have been that guy. He chose not to be that president. He chose instead to do the total opposite and play the victim card. But, you know, I don't know how much Quentin Lucas could have done on that front in a short period of time, but it certainly wouldn't have hurt anything, right? But the problem is COVID expedited and made all these problems worse because all these kids who already were in very difficult home environments, right? Talking about single parents barely hanging above the poverty line, if above the poverty line at all, being sent home. The only structure for so many of these kids was school. And we took it away from them to protect great grandma. We set all these poor kids back. It's the last thing we should have done. If you wanted to see the wealth gap close in some way, this is the last thing you would have done. If you wanted to exacerbate the problem, this is one of the first things you would have done. And that's what we did. And we did it in the name of COVID and getting Trump and the election and everything else. And now it's not a shock to me that you've seen this massive crime spike over the last few years in most major American cities. And D.C. is the heart of it right now because of what the president is set to announce as he gets set to take the podium here. And we're seeing it obviously play out in Kansas City as well. He will be flanked by Pete Hegseth to his right, Defense Secretary Pam Bondi to his left. Kash Patel is out there as well. Kash looking like deer in the headlights as always. Kash looks like he just saw a ghost. It's okay, Kash. You're going to make it, buddy. Who else is out there? It looks like Judge Jeanine Pirro is out there as well. She's the new prosecutor for Washington, D.C. So they have all taken their positions, assumed their positions on the stage, and the President of the United States will be speaking here momentarily. And here we go.
Here's President Trump.
I've been up here a lot. I've never seen a crowd like this. I think we need a ballroom, and that's happening. It's going to be a beautiful ballroom. This is really a lot of people, most I've ever seen in this room. And we're here for a very serious purpose, very serious purpose. Something's out of control, but we're going to put it in control very quickly like we did on the southern border. I'm announcing a historic action to rescue our nation's capital from crime, bloodshed, bedlam, and squalor, and worse. This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. We're taking it back under the authorities vested in me as the President of the United States. I'm officially invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. You know what that is? And placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly. And you people are victims of it, too. You know, you're reporters, and I understand a lot of you tend to be on the liberal side, but you don't want to get mugged and raped and shot and killed. And you all know people and friends of yours that happened. And so you can be anything you want, but you want to have safety in the streets. You want to be able to leave your apartment or your house where you live and feel safe and go into a store to buy a newspaper or buy something. And you don't have that now. The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, some of the places that you hear about as being the worst places on earth, much higher. This is much higher. The number of car thefts has doubled over the past 5 years, and the number of carjackings has more than tripled. Murders in 2023 reached the highest rate probably ever. They say 25 years, but they don't know what that means because it just goes back 25 years. Can't be worse. Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged out maniacs and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it. Just like we did on our southern border. Nobody comes through our southern border anymore. 3 months in a row, we had zero. I don't know if that's right, but the people that do the work, it's a very liberal group of people, actually, and they actually said zero for the last 3 months. Nobody thought a thing like that was possible. And, you know, when you take a look at numbers, I just saw some charts. These are different cities throughout the world. Red is, okay, the red is a place called Washington, D.C. Look at these. Baghdad we doubled up on Baghdad. Panama City, Brasilia, San Jose, Costa Rica, Bogota, Colombia, heavy drugs. Mexico City, I mentioned, Lima, Peru, all double and triple what they are. So do you want to live in places like that? I don't think so. I don't think so. And I think the people in this room, if you wrote correctly, you'd see, look at the kind of numbers we have. D.C., 41 per 100,000, number one that we can find anywhere in the world. Other cities are pretty bad, but they're not as bad as that. Is that where you want to live? The reporters of the world? Juvenile offenders and crimes against persons, as they say. It's getting worse. Not getting better, it's getting worse. And we had a recent indication. There was a story about a man who was just left. He quit because he was asked to do phony numbers on crime. And we're going to look into that. I think Pam is going to be looking into that. But he was asked by the city, I guess, that we don't want to show the real numbers. Let me do numbers so it looks like it's going down. Not going down. And under Biden, it was a disaster. And nobody did anything about it. We're going to do things about it like you wouldn't believe. Every American has a constitutional right to be able to access and petition their government in safety, and countless federal officials and employees likewise have the right to carry out their jobs in peace without being shot. As you know, I lost a very good person a while ago, was shot waiting for his wife. He was in the car. They robbed his car. They shot him. They killed him like it was nothing to it. She was walking to the car. It's a horror show. This issue directly impacts the functioning of the federal government and is a threat to America, really. It's a threat to our country. We have other cities also that are bad, very bad. You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is. We have other cities that are very bad. New York has a problem. And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland. We don't even mention that anymore. They're so far gone. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this. And this will go further. We're starting very strongly with D.C., and we're going to clean it up real quick, very quickly, as they say. Days ago, a former member of the DOJ staff was savagely beaten by a band of roving thugs after defending a young woman from an attempted carjacking. He was left dripping in blood. He thought he was dead with a broken nose and concussion. Can't believe that he's alive. He can't believe it. In June, a 21-year-old congressional intern was tragically killed after being hit by a stray bullet in a drive-by shooting. A former Trump administration official named Mike Gill, fantastic person, was murdered last year in cold blood in a carjacking blocks away from the White House. We all knew him. Great person. Waiting for his wife as she was walking to the car. A Democrat congressman was also carjacked at gunpoint not far from the Capitol. And in 2023, an aide to Senator Rand Paul was stabbed in the chest and head by a demented lunatic as he walked down the street, just absolutely for no reason. Horrifically, last July 4th weekend, a 3-year-old girl was shot in the head and killed while sitting in a car near the Capitol. It's becoming a situation of complete and total lawlessness. And we're getting rid of the slums, too. We have slums here. We're getting rid of them. I know it's not politically correct.
All right. There you go. President Trump announcing that Washington, D.C.'s police department will go under direct federal control and that they will deploy the National Guard. And two things stood out to me there. One, he talked directly to the reporters in the room. And he said, I know most of you are liberal. And he kind of said in a way like, whatever, that's fine. We all know the game here. But you want safe streets. You live here. You work here, as many of them do. You want to be able to go out at night and not worry about getting carjacked, getting robbed at gunpoint. God forbid getting stabbed, shot, or killed. That's a great pitch. What are you going to say? And then he talked about other American cities, which is what I was hoping he was going to do in this press conference. And he mentioned Chicago and L.A. and New York and Baltimore and Oakland. And I was like, Kansas City. But he didn't go there. That's fine. But all these cities have very similar problems. And part of this, I believe, is a political calculation by the president, where if he can show dramatic decreases in crime, violent crime, in some of the worst parts of Washington, D.C., through a law and order approach, that could change the game in our political landscape all over the country. And while that's secondary to obviously saving lives, don't kid yourself, there's a political element to all of this as well. I love taking kids to a baseball game, but don't be annoying about it. Please don't be annoying. Is this annoying or cute? The internet is divided. After a 13-year-old aspiring umpire named Bradley went viral at the Cubs-Cardinals game over the weekend in St. Louis. So this kid, Bradley, was dressed up in his full umpire gear. He's got, the padding on. He's got the face mask. He's got the whole thing. And the broadcast team on Fox is talking about it on Saturday night. And here's what it sounded like. But listen, I love taking kids to the ball game. I love getting kids involved in youth sports. You know that, all right? I speak to that as an undefeated assistant soccer coach for kindergartners, okay? But please, this is one of those things that is very annoying to everybody else in your section and is clearly just a play to get on television.
And by the way, huge day in umpiring. Jen Powell making
Atlanta,
Major
right?
League history in Atlanta today over at first base. First female umpire in a Major League game. Congratulations to Jen. I just cannot get over how much Bradley puts on his mask like Bill Miller does. I cannot get over it.
Uh-oh.
High fly ball, deep left field. Shaw tattoos it. Yeah, Bradley, it's gone. It is 9-0 Cubs.
So they show Bradley, and he's, doing the home run sign and the whole thing. And I really didn't want to be a wet blanket. I thought about this opinion for a while before I wanted to give it on the air. But I can't help but come to the conclusion that this kid is a nuisance to everybody in his section, and everyone around him knows it, but nobody wants to say anything to him. And I blame his parents. Not going to blame the kid. But what if you've got your kid sitting a couple of rows behind Bradley, who's standing in the aisle the entire game, doing his dopey umpire signs? What if you're taking your kid to the game and your kid can't see what's going on because this guy is literally standing in the middle of the aisle pretending he's calling the game? I mean, I get it. You want to go viral. You want to be talked about on the broadcast. You're 13. Okay? Sit down. Enjoy the game like the rest of us. You don't get the blocked the view of other people because you're a 13-year-old aspiring umpire. And that one is on the parents.